He was a Nepo baby who came up in one of the most pivotal territories in pro wrestling history, poised to become the new King of Memphis.
I was destined to become the greatest wrestler of all time.
But when the reigning King of Memphis never actually left, that prompted this young chosen one to take his act on the road to the biggest gig in town.
Oh, that Billy Ray, I'd like to slap the taste right out of his mouth.
Bright lights, screaming fans, gold records. The sky was the limit for the man with a taste for big sunglasses, combustible guitars, and spelling.
J-A-R-R-E-T-T, Jeff Jarrett.
But what happened when the world's greatest wrestler slash singer slash entertainer was upended by questionable booking and questionable decisions before finally leaving once and for all? You can't wait to be alone with your computer tonight as we explore the ups and downs of Jeff Jarrett in the WWF. This is Behind the Gimmick. Our story begins the same way many of our favorites do, in the fallout of the 1993 steroid trial. J Jarrett of the USWA joined the Federation as a consultant while Vince McMahon was off to navigate his legal woes. A talent trade was brokered during this time, essentially serving as a primordial developmental system for the WWF. Young Jeffrey, a referee turned wrestler who debuted in 1986, had had some opportunities in the company before, but now something really big was on the horizon. Since first putting on the boots, Jeff had always been portrayed as a classic white meat babyface. Maybe it was Vince's flair for the outlandish, or just his long-time disdain for anything Southern, but either way, McMahon decided to color his version of Jarrett with a different set of crayons. Gone was the Ricky Morton-esque Jeff Jarrett, and in his place was the rhinestone-bedazzled Double J.
It's not what I'm the greatest at. It's not wrestling. It's what's in my heart. The country music business. I've been telling you about the corrupt politics in country music, hadn't I? It's gonna say the Double J Auditorium!
Jarrett was now presented as a wrestler turned country music hopeful who planned to parlay his success in the ring to a career in Nashville. His new gear looked inspired by Porter Wagner, if the fashion of Porter Wagner itself were on steroids. I mean, can't you just picture this walking parade float taking the stage at the Grand Ole Opry? And to complete the look, check out these cool suspenders. Seriously, those stupid straps almost need a whole video on its own. I've watched a lot of different wrestling over the years, and I have never seen any piece of ring attire that has both confused and frustrated me so thoroughly. I just don't understand the tactical advantage of giving the top half of your singlet a whole bunch of extra shit to catch on. Was it meant to be more ergonomic? Improve his lift and drag when running the ropes? You can't even convince me it was meant to resemble a guitar, because a guitar has 6 strings on its neck. And in the case of Double J's outfit, there were 5 of them! Jesus! Is the reaction that they wanted to get out of people, and they certainly did that. They made a lot of people mad about that outfit over the years. But no, sir, I wasn't mad about it just now. You were mad about it. Jarrett and his glittery new gimmick made his on-air debut for the Fed in December of 1993 as a clear-cut heel, while simultaneously playing babyface in Memphis as he fought off the WWF invaders. Learn more about that in my McMemphis episode. Despite the elaborate presentation at the onset, Jarrett was somewhat rudderless for much of his first year. He was one of the many heels who helped Yokozuna beat The Undertaker in a casket match at the 1994 Royal Rumble. His next career highlight was to come at WrestleMania 10 in Madison Square Garden. A 10-man Get Everybody We Can on the Card match was booked as Jarrett, IRS, Rick Martel, and the Head Shrinkers were to take on the 1-2-3 Kid, Sparky Plugg, Tatanka, and the Smoking Guns. But as fate would have it, Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon were too busy having one of the greatest matches in Mania history to keep track of their times, and as a result, the tag match was cut to leave enough time for the main event. That's kind of a conflicting feeling. On the one hand, boo to Shawn and Razor for going so long on their time they screwed 10 guys out of a Mania payday. But on the other hand, losing that match was almost addition by subtraction for the show, right? I mean, no disrespect. The match ended up taking place on Raw a few weeks later as a make-good, with Jarrett's team getting the win. Double J did O-double-K for himself at that year's King of the Ring tournament, losing in the second round to the 1-2-3 Kid. Finally, Jeff had a feud he could really sink his teeth into with Doink the Clown. Wow, what a terrific endorsement of your abilities! By 1994, Doink had lost his last shred of likability to anyone over the age of 10 and wasn't even played by the original wrestler who brought the character to life. Babyface Doink was a shell of his former self, and a program with him wasn't going to launch Double J into the stratosphere. There was one notable moment in the feud when Jerry Lawler was interviewing Dink on stage. Doink came out and inexplicably dumped all sorts of gunk on his pint-sized sidekick, only for the Doinkster to reveal himself as Jarrett. It was the first of several times over the years we'd see Jeff Jarrett, Master of Disguise. After that feud ran its course, Jarrett pivoted from fighting a clown to, ironically, a man wearing a circus tent. The Double J Mabel program was positioned as a clash of styles, country music versus rap music. It was not unlike what WCW would do 5 years later with the West Texas Rednecks and the No Limit Soldiers, and while neither of those feuds are what you would call inspired, at least Double J came out on top. Coming up on 1 year in the company, Jarrett's spot on the card was no better than it was when he debuted. He needed something to jumpstart his career, some moment that would turn his fortunes around. But what could you do at this point? I don't know, let's say something totally random. What if, Chuck Norris kicked him really hard? Oh, they actually did that. Whether by coincidence or simply by virtue of Chuck Norris's raw power, Double J's fortunes did improve at the turn of the year. He gained a new sidekick in the Roadie, and at the 1995 Royal Rumble, he challenged Razor Ramon for the Intercontinental Championship. After the bad guy lost by countout due to Roadie's interference, Razor was goaded by Jarrett into restarting the match and was pinned when his injured knee failed him. The J-Man finally had some gold, the first of what would become a then-record 6 reigns with the IC title. A rematch at WrestleMania 11 ended with Jarrett losing by disqualification, keeping the title in the process to people's frustration. Razor got a little revenge on Double J and the Roadie in a handicap match at the inaugural In Your House pay-per-view that May, but it was a case of winning the battle, losing the war. Over the next couple of months, the belt would get somewhat of a hot potato vibe about it. Before In Your House, he actually lost and regained the title in the span of 2 episodes of Action Zone. On one episode, Sparky plug beat Jarrett, albeit under controversial circumstances, which meant the belt got held up, and Jarrett won it back the following week. Then the week after In Your House, Razor and Jarrett traded wins and the title in a pair of international house show matches. All this was done, of course, in the name of getting people to hate Jarrett, and it certainly worked. By this point, he was easily one of the top 2 or 3 heel acts in the whole company, and now the promotional machine was firmly behind him. In the spring of '95, the WWF dropped With My Baby Tonight, an incredibly corny yet insidiously catchy tune allegedly performed by Jarrett himself. Well produced and not entirely unlike some of the songs topping the country charts at the time, it definitely had the potential for some radio play if they played their cards right. And what's a better opening hand than Jarrett performing the song live and in concert at In Your House 2? I can't wait to be alone with my baby tonight. Music. Double J pulled double duty on this night as he defended his gold against Shawn Michaels. In a year that's not exactly known for its quality, Jarrett and HBK were a bright point that night in Music City, delivering one of the best matches of 1995. The finish saw the Roadie accidentally trip up Jarrett, costing him the match and the title. Now, as the story goes, it was all meant to build up to an eventual breakup between Jarrett and the Roadie, with a babyface Roadie revealing that it was he, not Jeff, who actually sang the song. But we never got that breakup or the explanation behind it, as all of a sudden Jarrett and the Roadie both walked out of the company. But why? It was such weird timing. You would think that breakup angle would have given both guys some decent airtime, considering it was all revolving around a song the company had produced in the hopes of doing some kind of crossover appeal. So what gives? Though different theories have cropped up over the years, the official story is that both men saw more potential in staying together than by being apart, and Jarrett apparently thought that being revealed as a fake would be detrimental to his career. You mean a cheating heel? Outed for cheating? My God, man, that's career suicide! On top of all that, Jarrett apparently worried for his future in the WWF after his father left and went on to consult for WCW. But whether or not those fears were justified, the 2 young men went with their gut. After In Your House, Jarrett and Roadie went home and returned to the USWA in Memphis while they figured out their next steps. With the Federation unwilling to let Jarrett out of his contract, Double J relented and came back to the company at the December In Your House pay-per-view, celebrating all the success from his big hit that hadn't been mentioned once since July. He stuck around to attack Ahmed Johnson after his match, leading to an inconclusive bout between them at the 1996 Royal Rumble. And then he left again. So that was cool. On to the next chapter. Jarrett spent the next year wrestling on the other side of the dial on Monday nights, working for WCW. No longer a country western wannabe, but still rocking the weird-ass suspenders, Double J's highlights in Atlanta included being part of the Four Horsemen, then breaking off and feuding with former teammate Steve McMichael. That particular angle even saw the beginning of what would be a lengthy business partnership between Jeff and Mongo's ex-wife, Deborah. By the way, while that was going on, the roadie did go back to the WWF, and even though Jarrett wasn't there anymore, they still got some mileage out of that song they made. They were all like, hey, remember that song that one guy did? Well, it was totally this guy's voice the whole time. Now let's give it up for the real Double J, Jesse James. Once the contract from Turner expired, Jarrett bounced right back to the WWF in October of '97. From the get-go, his character and demeanor seemed very different from his last run there. He sounded bitter in his opening promo, incorporating real-life elements to his story and lambasting both Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff for fumbling his career.
Well, Eric, since I wasn't one of your boys, you put a lid on my potential. In all due respect, your vision sucked. Not only did I survive, but I walked out on you.
It was good to see Jarrett with a little bit of edge to him, and you thought maybe this is going to work, until he decided to go off script while airing his grievances.
Austin 3:16 offends me, because what you're doing is ripping off the Bible to put money in your pockets.
Oh, did you hear that? Oh, it's the sound of a bunch of big paydays for Jeff going down the drain. Oh no! No! Oh, the money! No! Oh, it's gone. When Jarrett called out the hottest selling t-shirt in company history as blasphemous, future WWF champion Steve Austin was rightfully heated about it. So much so that Austin made it clear to anyone who would listen that he would never work a program with Jarrett as a result. Yes, the shattered glass guy putting up a big glass ceiling for Double J is ironic. Despite the mixed outcome of his opening speech, Jarrett's return did earn him a spot on the DX In Your House that December, as he went one-on-one with The Undertaker, playa, and shockingly, Jeff would pick up the win, after Kane showed up and got his brother disqualified. Strut that strut, Jeff, you earned it. Now, as bad as it may have been for Jeff to lose out on working with the top guy in the company, nothing could have been as crushing a punishment as being part of the NWA invasion. 1997 ended with Jim Cornette leading the charge as the reanimated corpse of the National Wrestling Alliance stormed the gates of the WWF. Real wrestlers doing real wrestles. Men like Jarrett, the Rock and Roll Express, Dan Severn, Blackjack Barry Windham, Bob Holly, and Bart Gunn. Wow, do you think Jarrett spent every night of this run kicking himself? Jarrett defeated Barry Windham on Raw to win the vacant NWA North American Heavyweight Champ. Well, look at that. Nice to see Austin can still pop in to remind Jarrett of his place on the card. The NWA, everyone! But what's more idiotic than the entire premise and execution of the NWA stable in the WWF? Whatever the hell Jarrett was wearing this time around. Jeffrey, what's the matter with a good old-fashioned pair of trunks? Within months, the angle was scrapped, and the National Wrestling Alliance would have to wait another 4 years to be relevant again. Meanwhile, it was time for Jeff to pull his big cowboy hat and light up sunglasses out of the mothballs. Suddenly, he was a country star again. He traded in his roadie for a manager in Robert Fuller, known here as Tennessee Lee. He added the rebranded Godwins, aka Southern Justice, to his crew as bodyguards. It was as if the Double J character had walked into our universe through a time-bending portal, and the first 6 months of his return never existed. Now he was back to doing something he had already been exposed for being fraudulent at. Why was he doing this? Does anyone else give a shit about all this besides me? Apparently it wasn't enough for just the Nation to feud with DX in the summer of '98. Now Jarrett and company wanted a piece of the action as well, with Jeff setting his sights on X-Pac. It came to a head at SummerSlam in a hair versus hair match, which saw X-Pac come out on top and Double J being shaved bald. Oh wait, never mind. He didn't go bald. He just got a nice haircut. Well, that's neat. The loss set off a complete image change for Jarrett. Gone were the musical ambitions and the goofy straps. Tennessee Lee was fired and Southern Justice were gone from the picture not long after. Now he was grittier, rougher. It was safe to say you did not want to upset him. He was so close, but there was one piece of the puzzle left missing.
I wonder what the relationship here is between Deborah McMichael and Jeff Jarrett.
The act was finally complete when the former Deborah McMichael jumped to the WWF, who with her ever-shrinking outfits guaranteed Jeff an excited pop from the horny male audience members in attendance. And Jeff's whole thing around this time was he was mad. He would cut these pre-taped promos that aired for weeks about how mad he was. Mad at the folks who held him back, mad at the world, mad at Monica Lewinsky?
You know what else pisses me off? Women with semen-stained dresses.
Monica Lewinsky.
Semen-stained dresses.
Poor pigs.
That really pisses me off.
You know what pisses me off? Baseball.
If I gotta hear Jeff Jarrett say the word semen, you have to as well. Eventually, Jarrett and Deborah began to work alongside Owen Hart. Jeff and Owen had a lot in common. They were both second-generation wrestlers, they both had blonde hair, and they both kneecapped their own careers by running afoul of Steve Austin in 1997. Hart and Jarrett meshed well as a team, with Deborah serving as a constant distraction for their opponents. The act worked so well, they soon won the tag team titles from Ken Shamrock and the Big Boss Man in a rare heel versus heel match the night after the '99 Royal Rumble. The highlight of their reign came at WrestleMania 15, when the two defended the belts against the makeshift team of D'Lo Brown and Test, two guys who were paired together by winning a battle royal earlier in the night on the pre-show. Hart and Jarrett were such effective heels that their 2-month reign as champions felt a lot longer, but it all came crashing down just days after WrestleMania when they lost the titles to the new odd couple of X-Pac and Kane. Their time on top of the division having come to a close, Owen and Jeff's characters began to go in different directions, only for tragedy to intervene. WWF head writers Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara had concocted a storyline for the former champions and their manager, a love triangle where Owen and Jeff would fight over Deborah's affections. But Hart turned down the storyline, finding it distasteful and disrespectful of his marriage. Instead, Hart was recast as his old Blue Blazer character, a pious parody of the Goody Two-Shoes wrestlers from a decade or so earlier. The whole storyline revolved around Owen denying up and down that he was the Blazer. And even though there were a couple of red herrings, including Jarrett himself, in the end, yeah, of course it was Owen. The tag team partners suddenly went on two very different paths. The Blazer feuded with the Godfather over the Intercontinental Championship because boo hoes, while Jarrett and Deborah feuded with Val Venus and his new valet Nicole Bass. Matches were set for both on pay-per-view in Kansas City. Then on May 26th at Over the Edge, Owen tragically fell to his death as his planned entrance of being lowered into the arena went horribly wrong. Now, I'm not going to use this video as some big debate over whether or not the show should have continued after the accident, but if there ever was a case for shutting it down, it would be this, the sight of Jarrett cutting a promo through tears, still processing the probable death of one of his best friends, before being essentially shoved through the curtain to go through the motions of his match with Val. By all accounts, Owen as the Blazer was meant to win the IC title at Over the Edge, but after his passing, the title instead went to his tag team partner Jeff Jarrett, who beat Godfather 2 days later on a Raw taping to begin his fourth reign. This has been the conclusion of your occasional reminder that the Godfather was Intercontinental Champion. Much like his last big run in '95, Jeff had a habit of dropping his title, then soon getting it back. He lost the belt to Edge at a house show in Toronto, only to win it back one night later at the Fully Loaded pay-per-view. Just a few weeks later, he lost the belt to D'Lo Brown, making him the first ever Eurocontinental Champion. Then like a week later at SummerSlam, he got it back thanks to both Deborah and Mark Henry betraying D'Lo. And as lazy as it was to just rinse and repeat the same ways to get heat, it worked. Once again, Jarrett had positioned himself as one of the top baddies in the company. He was a really solid worker. He could get heat from fans doing the simplest of things. Yes, sir, things were finally beginning to look up. Oh, thanks for popping in again, Steve. I'm glad this never goes anywhere. As summer turned to autumn, Jarrett became more unhinged, going full-on unabashed misogynist. He began shouting down more at Deborah, and often went on rants about how women belonged in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant, and nowhere near a wrestling ring, except for the woman he kept around with him, and her new assistant, Miss Kitty. Okay, she's here now, I guess. Thanks, Jerry. By the way, on a general note, I find it fascinating that Jarrett spent so many years of his career being surrounded by beautiful women for eye candy when he himself has to be in the running for wrestling's most asexual character ever. Deborah and Kitty were ultimately betrayed/fired by Jarrett as his war on women continued, from Jacqueline to the fabulous Moolah and Mae Young to special guests like Cindy Margolis and Ben Stiller. I think this made most of the locker room look pretty dumb, letting Jarrett run around el-kabonging and figure-4ing women and other innocents completely unchallenged. You're telling me there wasn't one guy back there who was going to stand up for a woman's honor, or at the very least go, hey man, what the hell, Ben Stiller's cool? It was China who finally had enough of Double J's woman-hating antics and signed up for his open challenge for the Intercontinental title. Their match took place at Unforgiven that September, and once again Jarrett escaped by the skin of his teeth. China had the match won after Deborah got a receipt on Jarrett, only for the decision to be reversed by scab referee Tom Pritchard. The issues escalated and the stakes were raised as Jarrett and China faced off in a good housekeeping match 1 month later at No Mercy, basically a hardcore match with a domestic theme. There was just one small problem. See, the date of the No Mercy pay-per-view was October 17th, 1999, one day after Jarrett's contract as a wrestler had expired. In a rare moment, Vince McMahon was in a position of vulnerability due to a clerical error. Now the company basically had to bend to Jarrett's demands if they wanted to ensure that the title match and the coronation of China would happen as planned. In a bold move, Jarrett demanded a check for $200,000 to work that night, as well as stock options in the company as they were getting ready to go public. The money was to cover all future payouts and royalties that were legally owed to him, but that he wasn't sure the company would actually pay when he left. Truth be told, Jarrett had good reason not to trust Vince on following through with those payments, given his history. Guys, come on, I'm obviously talking about Stampede Wrestling. Vince begrudgingly obeyed, and Jarrett did his part, putting China over in a very silly match as she became the first and thus far only woman to have held the Intercontinental title. With that, Jarrett left the company and headed back to WCW the very next day. There he had a powerful ally in head writer Vince Russo, and there was no invisible ceiling in place to keep him from going to the top of the crop. Jeff would finally get the push in WCW that he was denied in the WWF, winning multiple world championships, just as the company was tail-spinning creatively before going under a year and a half after his return. After skipping out in the WWF on more than one occasion to begin with, his final departure at No Mercy made Jeff Jarrett a dirty word in the Federation, something Vince McMahon certainly got across when he called him out by name on the night of the final Nitro in 2001.
Capital G, double O, double N, double E. Gone.
Vince, I believe you just spelled the word goonie. With few options available at the time, Jarrett had a brief stint working for World Wrestling All-Stars in Australia, before he and his father Jerry would go on to create the closest thing to competition WWE would have in the 2000s in total non-stop action. But that's an episode for another time. Obviously, the story of Jeff Jarrett is a successful one in the grand scheme of things. Even after all the controversies and the years spent building up TNA and working in Japan and Mexico, Jarrett was welcomed into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2018, one of the most surprising inductions since Bruno Sammartino or Randy Savage. He made a couple of more appearances there over the years and even briefly served as a vice president there before joining AEW in 2022 and forming the team of total nonstop arseholes. Thanks for that one, Tom Campbell. Jarrett's early days in the WWF did no favors for him politically. His back already against the wall by virtue of his lineage, he made costly decisions that negatively impacted his career for a time. But considering he's managed to continue his run as wrestling's most employed man for decades, I guess it's hard to second guess the logic of Double J. But what did you think of Jeff Jarrett and his time in the WWF? What were some of your favorite or least favorite matches and moments he had there? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, hit that bell icon for all the notifications. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.